the beat. To the beat.
What is up, my YouTube viewers? This is the Nathan Model Reviews channel, and today we have a comparison video between the Kobe 9 EM as well as the Kobe 8. Both shoes are very popular as far as shoes go in the basketball world. A lot of people are buying these shoes because of the colorway, the low top feature, and all the aspects that make this shoe great as far as comfortability, materials, and all that stuff. So I'm going to be comparing a lot of stuff that you see in my detailed review videos on shoes. So I'll start off with pricing first, because I know a lot of you guys are probably in the market for buying one shoe, one specific shoe for you. So let's just get started. So the pricing for the Kobe 9 EM as well as the Kobe 8 differ by a $20 increase from the Kobe 8. If you are living in the United States, these guys will be $160, so then these guys will be $140. If you live in Canada, these guys will be exactly $200, while this will be $180. For the $20 price increase, I really was disappointed. I mean, like, it wasn't that much of a difference aesthetically as well as functionally, if that makes sense. But it's pretty much the same exact shoe. They're both have the same kind of aspects and materials overall, and they feel exactly the same pretty much. But I'll get onto that with the materials. So if you're planning on getting the Kobe 9 EM, just expect to pay a little more than what you can get exactly from with the Kobe 8. But it's your opinion. I mean, it's just my personal comparison video between the two. So let's get onto the materials. Before I ramble on about the materials section, I wanted to show you guys a quick overview between both shoes and see how they look aesthetically. If you want to purchase, like, whichever one looks cooler to you, I mean, you can buy whatever you want. It's just a comparison video, but I just want to show you guys, before I get into the actual discussion about the materials, I want to show you the overview of the shoes first. So here is the shoes from the front. By the way, both these colors are my favorite colors out of the colorways that I've seen so far between the two. Actually, this is my favorite colorway for the Kobe 9 EM, and then there's this colorway and the mine grays, the red ones that I have, and a couple other ones I can't remember. But anyways, so here's the lateral side from the Kobe 9 EM, and then the Kobe 8 lateral side. On the heel, it changes, obviously. On the medial sides here, you can see it's a bit different as well. And if you're going to change up the materials, obviously you have to change up the traction a little bit. You guys can see that. So there's the traction patterns. So yeah, let's get started with this discussion for the materials. The materials, for me, I didn't really experience a dramatic kind of advantage over the Kobe 8 from the Kobe 9 EM. It pretty much played the same for me. And let's start off with the upper first. The upper features, they both feature engineered mesh. The texture of it is the same exact thing. So we'll start off from the tongues here. Both tongues are different from each other. This tongue on the Kobe 9 EM features a synthetic leather. It's a little more plush, and it's not thin at all. It is thin, but it wasn't as thin from the Kobe 8, but I'll get into that after. But the tongue itself is a little more thicker, and then there's mesh below it, as well as a U shape to stop the tongue right there. And then from the Kobe 8, it's that thin, which you guys already know if you do have a Kobe 8, is a very thin, kind of paper thin tongue that didn't really wrap around my front of the foot good for me. And then there's a bit of padding in between the tongue, and then instead of it being a U shape to connect it, it has flex grooves to help you flex your foot a little bit better. And it's not really a U, it's kind of like a edged kind of shape. I don't know what to call that, but overall I didn't really have a major difference between the two. I'd say this feels a lot more comfortable, while this one adds a little more flexibility from the toe box when you're stepping. And then there's still that fused rand at the edge of the toe box. Same material, obviously it's just fused. And then we'll take a look at the lateral sides here. So the lateral side from the Kobe 8 is pretty plain, nothing spectacular here. Just got this midsole and then the swoosh in this plastic kind of material. And then you can see the TPU heel counter wrapping around. Whereas the Kobe 9 EM's materials from the lateral side is a little bit different. You got that cement print midsole. If there was colorways that mimicked last year's for this year's, I bet you can do it from Nike ID, but some materials may differ depending on the colorways. Both these shoes are general releases. This is the Pit Viper and this is the Laser Crimson, but both of these are general releases. And this particular version had a plastic swoosh, while this one was just a pretty much stitched on, well not stitched on, but like ironed on pretty much. And both lateral sides are pretty identical for me personally. The midsoles obviously change, and you can see the TPU wing tips that are wrapping around the lateral side, whereas this one didn't have wing tips, just a TPU in the back. And yeah, let's look at the heel now. Back heel. So the back heel here are dramatically different. The Kobe 8 had the TPU heel counter wrapping around the heel with your system logo, whereas this one you can see as a tiny system logo right there with your 9 stitches representing the 9th shoe. And there's no actual heel counter, it's just the heel clips on both medial and lateral sides. Like lockdown and support for this shoe from the heel in particular, I really had no problems. You can go with either one, and it does exactly the same for you, so nothing really changed there. And then the medial sides didn't change at all. It's pretty much the same thing as the lateral sides. And then the traction, which I'll talk about in the next kind of step. So materials overall are probably will be based on what you like the most. If you like the Kobe 8 and did not have a chance to pick up the Kobe 8 just because it's a little more cheaper. And if you want that, want the new style with the Flywire and everything, this shoe didn't need Flywire. This didn't need Flywire either. But they just put it on so then a little more lockdown that's wrapped around your foot, but it doesn't really need Flywire. But so let's get on to traction. So the traction patterns between the two, on top we have the Kobe 8, and on the bottom you have the Kobe 9 EM. Both tractions play beautifully. I had no problems with any of it whatsoever. If I were to choose one for me personally, I'd go with the Kobe 8 just because it's classic herringbone and you can't go wrong with herringbone. This, however, was very, very great, so it was a very, very close second to me. And these two traction patterns are probably the best traction coverages on a shoe that you can ever get, especially when playing basketball. So traction overall they're pretty much the same as far as actual gripness, if that makes sense. Gripness I don't think is a word, but the stickiness of the rubbers between them is the same exact kind of feeling rubber. This, however, is a little more pliable, so on dusty courts these guys will have a little trouble keeping up with the Kobe 8 because Kobe 8's not that pliable. So tractions overall pretty much identical. The cushion found on both shoes feature a full-length Lunarlon midsole. So both these guys feature a Lunarlon midsole. As you can see right here, this is the Kobe 8 and this is the Kobe 9 EM. See some differences already with the texture. So the texture that differs between the two. The Kobe 8 actually has these like scales and it's not really raised. And then there's like the system logo on the heel. And it's not really raised and it's not textured. Whereas the Kobe 9 EM had these like kind of raised kind of circles, not circles, but like ovals almost, that are textured all the way through and gives you gives you a little more grip when your foot is inside. So once inside the footbed, once it's on top of the midsole, your socks and the actual midsole is not really slipping. Whereas this one, I didn't receive any slippage from this one from the start. Never had, but I guess some socks that don't feature some of the fabrics from a different sock. If you were to play in different socks between both of these shoes, you might slip. If you're wearing some kind of sock that will slip with this kind of midsole, but these guys, however, will not slip because it's raised and it has that texture to them. It's also a little bit thicker. The Kobe 8s, if you swap out, I know a lot of people swap out midsoles depending on what they feel and how the comfort level is for them. For me personally, I wouldn't swap out anything. Even with like LeBron 11 midsole, people are putting the Kobe 9 and switching out with the LeBron 11 midsole. But if you do plan on switching out, if you have both shoes in hand that you play on, if you switch, if you put the Kobe 8 midsole inside the Kobe 9 EM, just expect to feel a little more court feel, just because the Kobe 9 EM's traction, or the whole outsole, is really thin. Whereas if you put this in the Kobe 8, expect to have a little more impact protection and not that much court feel. On the bottoms of the midsoles, you can see it's a little bit different as well. Right there, this has it's pretty much the same kind of texture as the top right here, and then this is a little more raised, just like the top. Not as raised, but it's kind of raised. And then the Kobe 9 EM's midsole features flex grooves to help with flexing, whereas this did not feature any flex grooves at all. And overall, they play pretty much the same thing. It's Lunarlon. It's gonna mold to your feet. They will eventually break in, and you'll feel just a little more comfortable and give you a nice one-on-one fit for both. So cushions, you can pick whichever cushion. I don't really prefer. I prefer both. So yeah, just get what you will. If you like the Kobe 8's low profile cushion, get that. If you want a little, just like a hair pinch of a little more cushion, then I'd get the Kobe 9 EM. Now, their overall lockdown and support are on par with each other. Not really that much differences, only with the exception of the heel. The heel between both shoes feature different ways of using TPU for support and lockdown with your heel and your whole inner collar ankle. So the TPU for the Kobe 9 EM is featured on the medial and lateral side. It doesn't cup your whole heel, it just cups your sides here, as well as the middle one. So then you won't need use of a plastic carbon shank, which the Kobe 8 had. But this doesn't go all the way through. It's just this one side here. Overall, to me, for me personally, I know a lot of people still like the whole hugging of the TPU wrapping around your heel, but I'd go with this guy just because it's not, I feel more protected, because even the padding around your whole foot when you're putting it inside is a little more than the Kobe 8. But that's for me personally. I love that feeling of having it nice and tight and hugging my foot once it's inside the footbed. And I don't like having a TPU. Like, it's fine with the TPU wrapping around the heel, but I prefer these for me. So if I were to pick, I'd pick these guys for lockdown and support. It also comes with Flywire. It didn't really do much as far as actual support and lockdown goes. Like I said in the video section, they didn't really need Flywire, but they added it on there, so what can you do? But if I were to pick, like I said, I'd pick these guys right here. So the breathability aspects for both these shoes, I couldn't really feel. My feet don't sweat a lot, but I know a lot of people, I say this in most of my videos, but I know a lot of people are very serious about breathability. But if you are planning to pick one of these shoes, specifically for breathability, I'd go with these guys just because this one's backed up with the nylon, which is a lot more thicker than your typical fuse, which is backed on with the Kobe 8. Kobe 8 had a little more holes visually that you can see from within inside the shoe, and there's holes on the tongue, whereas this is mesh, but it's like I said, backed up with a nylon, which is a little bit thicker. So breathability I'd give to this guy. So the conclusion part of the video, I want to give you guys my personal scores out of 10 between these shoes. So materials for the Kobe 9 EM, I'd give a 10. I'd also give a 10 out of the Kobe 8. They're both engineered mesh. They both play exactly the same, so 10 out of 10 for both. Love it. Traction, I give these guys a 9.5 out of 10, or I'll give the Kobe 8 a 10 out of 10. I just really love this traction surface. I mean, the Kobe 9 did very, very good as well, but I just love this traction just a little more. It is, in my opinion, hands down the best traction coverage in a basketball shoe that I've ever worn, period. It did well on clean courts, done well on dusty courts. On any kind of court surface, you're good with the Kobe 8, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people like this one better than the Kobe 8. But like I said, it's my personal opinions. And yeah, so 9.5 for traction on these guys, and solid 10 out of for traction for the Kobe 8. The cushion, I'll give both of them solid 10s. Cushion exactly the same. Lockdown and support, I give a solid 10 for this, the Kobe 9 EM, and a 9.5 for the Kobe 8. So lockdown and support is a little more better because they did add Flywire, and they I like how it wrapped around my foot rather than the Kobe 8, which just had the heel counter in the heel. But yeah, 10 and 9.5 for the lockdown and support. Breathability, I'll give this guy 7.5, and I'll give this guy a solid 8. Both shoes are pretty decent for breathability. I just felt a little more air going through the Kobe 8 than I did with the Kobe 9 EM because, like I said, it's laced underneath with a nylon material, whereas this is just fuse. And then there's actual holes visible on the tongue, whereas this is just mesh, but it's laced underneath with nylon. So 7.5 out of 10 for breathability on the Kobe 9 EM, and a solid 8 out of 10 for breathability on the Kobe 8. And overall, which shoe I'd pick the most, the shoe that I'd pick to play in more would probably be this guy right here. I gotta hand it to it. It was definitely a nice short and quick little update between the Kobe 8. I mean, both shoes are very, very good, don't get me wrong, but as far as durability wise, I'd probably give it to this guy as well, just because it's a little more durable on in the materials department. This will probably last a little longer as well. This guy, however, this and the Air Jordan 28 were the best shoes for 2013. 2014, they stepped it up with the whole engineered mesh and all that stuff with the Kobe 9 EM. I'm really happy that they did do the low top version for the Kobe 9s, and I'm just really happy for this shoe, and I'm happy that I gave both of them respectively good scores overall. So this will conclude my comparison video between the Nike Kobe 9 EM and the Nike Kobe 8. I hope you guys like this video. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.